away.
So when we talk about Nene Valley, we often think about just the river, but it's a much wider area in that. It's all the floodplain that the river spills out into and the habitats along that. Over time, it's a landscape that's really changed in the last sort of hundreds of years. Farming practices have changed, urban areas have grown massively, and we've had a lot of gravel extraction, which have created brilliant gravel pit habitats that are really important for our birds, but we've lost some of those smaller, really fragile habitats, such as meadows, such as wetlands. So we've set up a project where we're working with farmers all the way across the valley to look at recreating some of these really important and fragile habitats that have been lost and reintegrating them into the modern farming system. So whether that's creating sort of networks of ditches and scrapes to hold water later through the spring, which creates wetlands for wading birds, or whether it's recreating wildflower meadows in parts of the farm that aren't that productive for food, but can really suit that kind of habitat.
Farming the Future is a 3-year project which is part of the Nenescape landscape partnership scheme. Within that, among other things, has a small grant scheme available for farmers and landowners to do sort of 3 things really. It's restore meadow habitats, or restore wetland habitats, and also provide better signage and things for public access and interpretation.
I'm 4th generation to farm here. We're farming about 900 acres here. The home farm, this farm here, is all environmental scheme, in HLS scheme. It's pennies for points with environmental schemes. The more things you do, the more points you get. And one of our options was a rare breed of cattle, and we have Lincoln Red cattle, which is great interest to me. I love my livestock probably more than the arable. Sheep is something I love. I love my sheepdogs. Since we've been involved with the scheme, we've taken on a flock of easy cares. They shed their own wool, so you don't need to shear them. They look after themselves pretty well. They lamb outside in April. We don't river ring their tails, and we probably only drench them once a year, whereas the Suffolks probably would get drenched 3 times a year. So they're just a low-intensity flock. I feel that they have a smaller carbon footprint and they are more environmentally trendy, if that is the right phrase for them, because they're very extensive. We don't stock them so tight, certainly on wildflower meadows like this, and we don't feed them anything. They don't get fed any sort of concentrate. And the quality of the lamb carcasses is nothing like as good as the Suffolks and the Suffolk crosses. So it's horses for courses, but they do fit into the environmental schemes really well. Traditionally, we've always had a pedigree Suffolk flock and commercial sheep, which don't do so well on low quality grazing. So the Easy Care sheep and the Lincoln Reds fit in well to what we're doing here. We are in the Nene Valley, and that's a big positive as far as doing the scheme is concerned, and something that we as a family have always enjoyed. My dad was a great conservationist. The River Nene is our biggest asset as far as that's concerned. As far as practical farming is concerned, it's not always an asset because obviously we're in a floodplain here, and one of the benefits of putting this into a wildflower meadow is the fact that it doesn't matter if it gets floods, and it can be a positive if it gets flooded. The River Nene is the biggest part of our environmental scheme, although the scheme does entail every arable field has got a 6-metre floristic enhanced margin round it, and we have lots of other options within the scheme.
Hay meadows have been a part of our landscape since Roman times, and our wildlife has adapted to the way we manage them, and their life cycles have adapted to living in wildflower meadows, and if we lose them all very quickly, the wildlife that thrives on these areas becomes lost. And they're basically creating hotspots of pollen and nectar in an increasingly less diverse landscape for insects and other wildlife to live and eat in.
We have about 45 acres down in these 2 meadows here. So these were drilled with a combination of old grasses and different wildflowers. So all of these are old-fashioned wildflowers and grasses that you would expect to have seen here 100 years ago.
Wildflowers in particular are very deep-rooted, so they're sucking carbon out of the atmosphere deeper into the soils than you would in a normal grass field. Because they've sort of got a rough structure with all the grasses, the water will then flow slowly back out, and that's creating a natural flood management system as well. This one's still quite in its early days of formation, so you've got some of the classic sort of meadow species here. You've got the knapweed, which is the purple thistle-like flower. You've got lots of birds' trefoil and lady's bedstraw, which are the yellow in colour. You've got hedge bedstraw and oxeye daisy, which are the white, and each of those have different insects that prefer them for foraging for pollen and nectar. provides a microhabitat for invertebrates as well. And obviously once you've got a good insect population, birds are coming in, you've got cover for small mammals, it's attracting other wildlife as well.
One of the reasons that the River Nene was chosen is that there's loads of farmers up and down the river, so that although you're giving one farmer sort of some money to do something, whether it's fencing or improving the water retention of their soil through meadow creation or something like that, it actually has a whole catchment effect, so it's a cumulative effect from sort of farmers up in Northampton upstream to all the way through towards Peterborough.
And the river itself is creating a main corridor that wildlife can move up and down, and connecting these habitats that we're creating alongside it. And also it's allowing the river to not just be contained within its banks, to flood out when it needs to flood out, and to be a bit more dynamic.
The Nene Valley holds international importance because it's designated as a Ramsar site and a SPA, which is a special protection area for overwintering and breeding birds, so it's important on an international scale.
As far as the scheme is concerned, it is very prescriptive, and as far as these wildflower meadows are concerned, we're not allowed to cut them until the 15th of July. So we make hay out of it, and then we'll graze it either with the Lincoln Red cattle or the Easy Care sheep, and they'll stay in here as long as they practically can over the winter. And obviously if we have a wet winter, then they can flood and can sit underwater for 2 or 3 months of the year.
Here we are using a big machine called a rotary ditcher to create new ditches and scrapes. It's the RSPB's and it's the only one in the UK, and it's effectively a big wheel which is very sharp and is pulled by a tractor, and as the wheel is pulled along the ground it creates shallow U-shaped drains, so effectively puddles that hold water for longer and that flood over into the winter, and then rather than sort of draining out back into the river or going down into the groundwater table. Ideally, if we've got water in these fields until sort of May time, that's like job well done.
My wife is very supportive and my son is too, and I'm very lucky that I have a sister that lives in the village, Liz, and it's her life, the wildlife side of things, and she's very supportive, and we do quite a lot of educational access visits, and my brother-in-law, who's an expert on bees, gets involved as well. So we're a big family team, and Ben, who works for us, is very much part of the team. We're guided by the prescriptions from Natural England, but the Wildlife Trust have always been very supportive of us, and we love having them out to come and tell us whether we're doing the right things or not.
There hasn't been anyone in the valley talking to farmers and bringing them all together and realising that they're part of something much greater than just themselves and their own farm business, especially with the new stewardship schemes that will be coming forward, where environment will be more important and ultimately will probably fund a lot of farm businesses. It's been really great to sort of help farmers get onto sort of that ladder if they weren't already, or actually improve what they're already doing, and often alerting them to the fact that they are already doing such great work, and sort of championing that has been really great.
More and more farmers now are looking at possibly diversifying a little bit, and if we wanted to sell some Easy Cares, we are using rams called Exlanas, which in effect are improved Easy Cares, so we are trying to improve the Easy Cares and getting their growth rates and their conformation a bit better. So if we can concentrate on that breed, I think that might be a way forward, in the same way as the Lincoln Red cattle could be a way forward rather than the continental breeds. But there's so many unknowns with farming, we really don't know where we're going, but I couldn't farm without livestock. But because of the wonderful places like this, we couldn't have meadows like this if we didn't have livestock to look after them. The uncertainty concerns me, and we are sort of aware and looking at things that can back up the farming income if we do have a big blip with the Brexit, which we are concerned about. Farming is my life, and whatever I do in the future, it'll involve farming. Having spent all my life on this farm, I would never move away from here.
I love that agriculture is so entwined with nature here. There are so many farmers that sort of like parts of the UK which are so agriculturally intensive, but here it just feels like so many farmers want to do their very best for nature and want to work with the surrounding land, and I think having a river running through it, it all seems to piece everything together and everything seems so much more connected.